Yeah, the late great David Foster Wallace, who used to teach just down the road from us, if you take Route 47, Illinois State University. And in fact, I'm proud to mention that I taught right alongside him just for a year, way back when. Wallace, Wallace laughed with Kafka. As he writes in this little late edition to your readings for the week, I don't really expect you to read it, but you're certainly welcome to. And I listed it on the website under content. He writes, another handicap, even for gifted students, is that unlike, say, Joyce's or Pound's, the exformative associations Kafka's work creates are not intertextual or even historical. Kafka's evocations are rather unconscious and almost sub-archetypal. The little kid stuff. The little kid stuff. You just read a little comic there from Calvin and Hobbes. The little kid stuff from which myths derive, those Kafka dreams. This is why we tend to call even his weirdest, most Kafka dreamiest stories nightmarish rather than surreal. Not to mention that the particular sort of funniness Kafka deploys is deeply alien to kids whose neural resonances are American. The fact is that Kafka's humor has almost none of the particular forms and codes of contemporary U.S. amusement. And Wallace goes on. I will let you read the rest of his passage here on your own, right? And just still stop stop the film, right? And read the rest of it if you'd like. It's actually a wonderful little comment. I think it's more a comment on on us, on Americans, than it is a comment in American humor than I think it is a comment on Kafka. But I think you would find it very interesting. So I'm going to let you do that, and then please move on. Note Sane's response to 200 mod 5 Q2. A theme is a central idea in literature. Edgar V. Roberts states a theme unifies and controls the total work. Austin and Amanda, quoting closer to home from sources I have provided, a theme as defined by the Norton Introduction to Literature is, quote, a general idea or insight conveyed by the work in its entirety. The theme of a work is an idea it communicates, but not just any idea it provokes. It is the idea towards which the work as a whole is driving throughout. The work in its unity, totality, and entirety, centrally as opposed to peripherally or tangentially. Carolina, also quoting the Norton, concurs, quote, theme, a statement a work seems to make about a given issue or subject, is by its very nature the most comprehensive, the business of entirety, the most comprehensive of the elements, embracing the impact of the entire work. Indeed, the theme is not part of the work, but is abstracted from it by the reader or audience. The theme, quoting Carolina, as opposed to a theme, I'm actually quoting what Carolina quoted, as opposed to a theme, right? There's a distinction there, isn't there? Gladys notes how a writing piece can have more than one theme. And Jay agrees, Jay, character from a different section. Jay agrees, stressing how we often disagree about the theme of a particular work. Quote, one's insights can differ from those of others and may form a differing view of the work's point or its essential meaning. But look at the way that we often speak of theme, the way we typically speak of theme, as in the theme of X or Y. We rarely say a theme of, not when we're using the term properly. We say the theme of X or Y, and we suggest thereby that we tend to assume that one idea is more central or overarching and inclusive than the others. We may disagree as to what that idea is, but we tend to agree that a work has a theme. It is the theme. We sometimes say a theme. We intend to say the theme. Quoting the Norton further, Emily introduces a crucial issue. This is very crucial. Theme in a story is sometimes said to refer to a topic or subject captured in a noun phrase, the wisdom of youth, loss of innocence, the dangers of perfectionism, or even single nouns, loss, youth, grief, as we're going to see very soon, alienation, isolation. But Mays, also known as the Norton, Mays, of course, being the general editor, is not yet done. Note Alyssa's claim, which I found very helpful, that the Norton ends up rejecting this looser definition. Chapter 7 of the Norton states, quote, that a theme is specific in the sense that it is a complete idea or statement rather than a topic. Theme is a general idea rather than one that describes a character's plots or settings unique to one story. The gist of this is that a theme, being a complete idea or statement, tends to be like a sentence as opposed to just a phrase, right? Gladys amplifies, quote, what's important about having a theme is that it explains the overall why of the writing. For example, when reading the Metamorphosis, I would say that a topic would be family. We're going to agree here in a the next plate. But I could also say that the possible theme is, should family love unconditionally? Or to put it a little less interrogatively, put it more declaratively, it could be something like, Kafka shows how families should love unconditionally, but all too often fail to do so. Okay, absolutely. I think this is all very illuminating. Another way of putting this topic theme distinction, putting it rather rawly and starkly, the topic is what we get in hand when moving beyond mere story. Moving beyond mere story, which is just what happens in the story. We've begun working out the plot. You remember this previous distinction between plot and story. Oh, we say to ourselves, so this is what the story's about. It's about loneliness. Okay, that's a topic. That's what the story's about. It's about family. It's about isolation. It's about alienation, right? It's about, workplace funk. It's about this. It's about that. On the other hand, okay, the theme is what we have when, having moved past mere story to plot and finishing our working out of the plot, we say to ourselves, oh, so this is what the story plot author text is saying about or on the topic it is about, the topic of, for example, loneliness. Now let's put this all in one sentence. The topic is what the story is about, the theme, what it says about what it is about. I'm going to repeat that. When you're naming a topic, you're talking about a story, and somebody asks you, what's a topic? You're going to say what the story's about. What's the issue of the story? Not exactly the same as the issue when the term issue is formulated precisely, but close enough for this moment. What is the story about? That's your answer to the question, what is the topic of the story? Your answer to the question, what is the theme, is to say what the story says about what it is about, what it says about loneliness. Okay? And that will typically take the form not of a noun phrase, right? But of indeed a statement, a sentence, okay, a syntactic unit that is complete. It's easy to confuse theme and topic. One could argue that many dictionaries do so. Collins, for example, enlisting the subject as one meaning of theme. Collins is correct that this term is sometimes used in this broader sense, but in most specifically literary discussion, the distinction holds. Note, for example, in Norton's insistence, May's, no relative of mine, May's insistence that equating theme with subject or topic is using the term very loosely. Okay, we've already begun to work out topic and theme and the work, the metamorphosis, right? Let me add to what's already been said by quoting Sane. Kafka criticizes the way that family obligation results in desertion. Even though Gregor makes sacrifices for his family, they reject him. According to his sister, we have to try to get rid of it. The it there is Gregor, no longer even a human being, according to the members of his family. According to Kafka, Sane sums up, people are only worth what they can offer, right? He was offering, as almost everyone noted in almost everyone's response, that he is offering financial help to the family, right? And once he can no longer offer that help, he just sort of, he's just there, right? And what's sad about this is this very instrumental, this very transactional nature of social life, according to Kafka, at least social life in his own community, according to Kafka, okay, is that it even governs that particular species of social life called family life. That's more painful to contemplate. We imagine that the family would be the place where we'd escape this more transactional quality of human relations, right? Well, I find quite illuminating Sane's, as well as Gladys's and M's from another section, sense that the topic, let's go back to topic and theme, or at least one topic is that of a particular subset of society, the family. Its toxicity, its capacity for estrangement from certain of its members. As Gladys asserts, although the family recognizes early on that the bug is Gregor, and at one time was the provider for the family, in the end they no longer care for him, not even his sister, because he can no longer contribute to the home. He is now useless to them. Ergo, and here we get the statement of theme, not all families have conditional love for their loved ones. And that can seem like a pretty simple thing to accept, but I think it's also a very painful thing to accept, right? Because I think most of us are members of families, and we expect a certain degree of unconditional love from our families. And it's painful to imagine that Kafka might be right about this, right? Okay, to put the point in properly thematic terms, although I think we've come pretty close to doing that in Gladys's ultimate statement there, might we say that Kafka, offers a harsh critique of the family as a social unit prone to turning on its own, when its own, whether son, mother, husband, wife, or in this case brother, fails to perform his assigned duty, fails even to be the person they require him to be. To put it more pithily, families all too often eat their own. Painful indeed to contemplate this as a truth that Kafka is attempting to communicate to us. Note how the majority of the responses to this item stopped with statements of topic. Alienation, that's Emily, McKenna, and Jerome. Isolation, Carolina. Or alienation and isolation, that's Amanda and Alyssa. They stopped, the majority of these responses to this item, they stopped with statements of topic that seem apart from the topic of family, but end up pointing to it. Did you notice that? Carolina, G emotionally, physically, and socially isolates himself from the world once he turns, but this isn't very new to Gregor because of how much beforehand he would sacrifice his own fun and own things to help his family and job. And by the way, he's helping his family by way of the job, as I think a lot of you have been arguing in your responses to assignment number 2, writing assignment number 2. So isolation and alienation, perhaps two non-synonymous words for much the same condition. Well, isolation and alienation from what? Well, from his workplace. Yes, recall the visit paid by his chief or supervisor. And from that larger entity that Emily calls society, but mostly I think you would agree from his family. Amanda, G feels singled out from and maybe even like the black sheep of his family. He becomes alienated from them. Okay? Note too the simple act required to get back to topic versus theme, to turn a statement of topic into a statement of theme. The theme can also be family, McKenna wrote. That's a good statement of topic, McKenna. To formulate theme, say rather what the novella is saying about family. I think this is clear enough by now. So let's move on. Topic and theme in The Hunger Artist, on the other hand. Logan specifies a topic, the search for meaning, then she begins to explore the plot for its theme. The artist puts himself through extreme fasting, only in the name of entertainment, being dubbed a professional hunger artist. Truly, he sacrifices himself for his art, not for fame or money, but for his art, and for the meaning that only his art can provide. That he fails, that his audience, as Logan puts it, utterly fails to appreciate his struggle, leaving him disconnected and alienated. Faith also notes this separation between the society and the artist. They'd rather enjoy mere spectacle. That's all to the point. The meaning of what he is doing is lost on those who view it, leaving the artist disconnected not just from his audience, but from his true purpose and existence. Ergo, therefore, the artist's art, or any meaning of life he is trying to get out of his art, depends on his audience, depends on others. Never mind what he says. Never mind that. As Riley says, for him, quote, only the art itself appears to matter. And you might remember that moment in which the narrator designates him as the one person, the one audience, member of the audience for one of his artworks who is to be satisfied by that artwork. He will be the sole satisfied observer of his art or appreciator of his art. One wonders whether even he himself can be satisfied by a perfect performance of art when you consider just how dependent he seems to be for any satisfaction he takes or any ultimate satisfaction he takes from his performance on his audience. The satisfaction, picking up again, he seeks by way of artistic performance depends on his audiences being willing and able to see his performance as art, as opposed to entertainment, or what have you, to appreciate its, as Faith puts it, artistic significance. Ruth Ann, the hunger artist, quote, feels a sense of personal failure because the townsfolk never really understood or appreciated his depth of art. You know, it doesn't need to be that way, if you see what I'm saying. Maybe that's one of the huge themes, the huge theme. You know the way we tend to speak. You know the way we tend to speak about a work of art. The theme of that work, right? Maybe this is the theme of this work. He needs not to take it personally, this indifference of the audience. That's his mistake, to take it personally, to want to be relevant. You hear in boldface a statement of theme. Art, whatever the art, because I see this as just an extreme form of art, right? Of what we have in the case of this story. Art, whatever the art, in order to last, okay, the artist in order to last, not to die, must be a thing unto itself, must be a virtue in itself, must not care whether it matters in the larger world, right? And that's his mistake, that he does care. But we note some critique here aimed at the Philistine public as well as the artist, who foolishly depends upon them. Once fasting loses its cultural primacy, it becomes a sideshow. The artist takes refuge even, at a large circus, you will recall, towards the end of the story, where he is again ridiculed or simply ignored by townsfolk, for they want to see livelier acts, not something withering away in a cage. It's the language of Ruth Ann. Good language it is, too. So, depiction of popular taste, the fickleness, the whimsy, the ephemeral quality of popular taste seems to be one of the satirical targets of the story as well. Well, more on Kafka's critique of the contemporary selves and souls, such as they are. Riley points to the central topic, I would say, of religion, more particularly to the bastardization of Christianity that we see today. Quoting the narrator's reference to this suffering martyr, which indeed he was, like Jesus or Moses, right? Riley implies that the hunger arts art is one of imitation, right? You can imagine expressive arts and also imitative arts. And imitative art, of course, being more an attempt to create something by means of your artistic medium that looks a lot like something in the world. In this case, a martyr is also known for fasting 40 days at a time, which we have seen Jesus and Moses do as well. It's as if the hunger artist is trying to create in himself, right, a living, breathing, barely breathing, picture of this ancient Judeo-Christian ideal that is rooted in willfully endured suffering and best embodied, of course, in the life of Jesus. For all its bodily basis, I agree with Ruth Ann, it is a spiritual ideal that he's attempting to embody. As Ruth Ann puts it herself, 40 days is spiritual, for Jesus spent 40 days and nights in the wilderness fasting. Kafka writes, quote, the longest period of fasting was fixed by his impresario at 40 days. Beyond that term, he was not allowed to go. Whatever the impresario's reason for that, it seems to be a significant number, and it's also a number that the hunger artist himself would appear to endorse, because he doesn't push back too hard against his impresario, at least for most of the story. But here we arrive at that modern bastardization of any religious significance which the story might be representing, right? Or any religious dimension of this world that the story is depicting, right? That it is calling attention to. And it's also the same bastardization of which Riley speaks, right? Ruth Ann, Kafka's narrator continues, quote, that for about 40 days, the interest of the public could be stimulated by a steadily increasing pressure of advertisement. But after that, the town began to lose interest. Sympathetic support began notably to fall off. Well, how to put this? Traditional spiritual exercise gives way to crass commercial exploitation. Riley, again, the capitalistic greed of some individuals has overcome them to take advantage of Jesus' name and words to profit and become more powerful than others. Something Jesus was directly against, which we can see in a hunger artist, specifically with the zoo at the end. And the zoo's audience viewing the artist as a way to make money rather than what he represented. So you can see that it's a sort of hijacking, a contemporary or modern day hijacking of this, what I put up above, the way I put it, this ancient Judeo-Christian ideal of willfully endured suffering in imitation of the life of Christ, right? This is put on, a commercial footing. This is put out there as a way of getting some money, right, for the impresario, who is, of course, not the artist himself. So this would seem to be another way of reading the book. And I think it's a way that is not at odds with the business we were talking about above. It just makes for a very complex statement of theme when you come up with your ultimate statement of theme, which wants to include both the critique of the artist and the critique of the audience. Well, I'm not going to offer such a arch and complete formulation in this moment. What I'd rather do in the remaining seconds that I have here on this plate is mention how E from another section should get the last word. Note how different a word this is, which should suggest to you the richness of the story. In The Hunger Artist, she says, I think that a possible theme is that of the quest for perfection. This quest for perfection is never ending. This is a little bit different way of looking at the novella, or even the short story, and attempting to formulate its central significance. We see an artist, E goes on, constantly fasting to achieve a perfect fasting form. Since people could not watch him 24/7, no one could produce firsthand evidence that the fast had really been rigorous and continuous. This is a quote from the story itself. Only the artist himself could know. He was therefore bound to be the sole, completely satisfied spectator of his own fast. And I mentioned that line up above. The quality of the fast performance ultimately is up to the faster's interpretation and viewpoint. Okay, so why does the story not have an happy ending? Well, in other words, why does it matter that the audience, whether the audience pays any attention? Well, let's put it this way. According to E, even if, we had an appreciative audience, an audience that, in fact, an audience as well as a kind of promotional apparatus that was not just looking for entertainment and not just exploiting, art for its commercial value, we'd still have a problem. This goes along the lines of the real problem here. The deepest problem is, of course, a problem with the hunger artist himself as opposed to his audience. Okay? Because he still would not be happy at the end of it all. He still would not get that meaning that Logan spoke about and that sense of significance of his life that he seems to be seeking by means of art. Right? He was never satisfied, you will recall that we read. Perhaps it was dissatisfaction with himself that had worn him down because he never felt that his fast was long enough. So he goes past the 40 days. He's allowed to go on and on and on, even the most rigorous and continuous fast, right? The most ultimately extended, that's what we get kind of at the end of the story, is not enough to create complete satisfaction. And maybe the reasoning behind that, the reason why, in fact, no matter how hard and how perfectly he fasts, no matter how long he extends his fast, no matter how many bounds he overgoes and how many limits, right, he exceeds, right, he's never going to be happy. And the reason why is because, as E puts it, he's searching for a certain level of perfection that is just simply unobtainable to humankind. So this struck me as a very interesting way of going back to the first of those two targets of critique, which of course would be the hunger artist himself and his motivation for fasting, independent of that sort of sub-critique of the audience, which doesn't come in for a lot of celebration, as we know in this story. All right, let's move on to the next play. Finally, let's introduce a third term for the week, really a fourth term. Theme, topic, issue. The theme, one theme, of the Metamorphosis, Kafka's topic being change, or the human ability to manage change, more specifically, his theme is that ability is severely, shockingly limited. We are much less able to handle change than most of us think. We often do not handle change well. We resist it and then it overwhelms. We don't so much change as wake up and find that we have changed. I'm, of course, repeating some statements from the previous plates. That's the theme. What's the topic? I've already said it, but I'll say it again. Named by one of you, but implied by others, change. Prominent throughout the story was transformation. That's the topic, change. What is the issue? Well, whether or not we can well manage change. That's a good way to put the issue in a whether or not statement. The issue of the story is a question of the story with respect to its topic, what it is about. What does it ask about what it is about? Theme is the answer to that question. It is what it says about what it is about. The topic here being changed, the question here, the issue is, can we accept, deal with it, survive it? That's the issue. That is the issue that the story deals with. It's the issue of, and notice how it's put in a question in interrogative form, or by way of a whether or not statement, has to do with change. Whether or not we can manage change well. Or can we manage change well? Can we manage change at all? That's a statement of issue as opposed to a statement of either topic or theme. The topic here being changed, the question here, the issue is, can we accept, deal with it, survive it? The topic being changed, the issue is whether we can accept it or whether humans have, according to Kafka, a fundamental dislike of change. Whether when things are at all satisfactory, we'd like them to stay that way, to stay just the way they are, perhaps even ignoring or avoiding and certainly not rising to the challenge of opportunities for self-improvement. Statements of issue often take the form of questions, as I just mentioned, or, as I mentioned, the form of a whether or not statement, which is really a kind of sentence fragment, but that's okay when you're stating an issue. Statements of issue often take the form of questions. A good way to formulate an issue is by way of the formula, whether or not X is, eats, hates, loves, influences, has X connection to, what have you, why? Whether or not something is something else, or is something something else? That's the question, the interrogative form, as opposed to the whether or not form. Well, this is something we're going to be going back to. It's really pretty fundamental, these distinctions, but they're very important, I think, to a clear and consistent discussion of literature. And they are fundamental building blocks of literary critical discussion. So to understand the difference between an issue, a topic, and a theme. So they're not going to go away, these blocks. We're going to be building on them throughout the semester, as you will be throughout your careers as undergraduate English majors. I regret that we didn't get around to questions of point of view. I never intended to, of course, because this is already an over 20-minute micro lecture, but I wanted to say that I thought the respondents to the questions on point of view did a splendid job and will be profiting from your insights in the coming weeks because, in fact, we're going back to point of view this coming week, even though there won't be a video this coming week. I think that there may be a video. There will certainly be some commentary and some questions about point of view in the future, and we'll have a chance then to profit from some of your insights. So that's it for today. Take care.